All right, we're gonna today start the basics of angles. And these three ideas here, the supplementary or linear pair, complementary and vertical pair, are gonna be our three most foundational angle relationships that we're gonna see over and over and over, always and forever in your life of geometry. But first, let's make sure we understand what the hell an angle is. So right here, guys, if you're starting here, like this is like a car that's driving, woo! And you decide to do some donuts, oh my God, we're going wild, and you do a full circle, that means, guys, that you just went 360 degrees. Whenever you guys go in a full circle all the way around, you just did a 360. Now, if you just did a U-turn, your car's driving over this way, then you just go skirt, and now you're driving the other direction, perfectly, is gonna be 180 degrees. Now, if you're driving, and you decide, oh, I need to take a direct right turn, you just made another 90-degree angle whenever we do sharp turns. So you guys naturally use a lot of angles in your life without realizing it. Now we just need the actual vocab. So take a minute, get all three of these ideas and little pictures drawn in your relationship, so we can start taking notes on them. The first relationship has two different vocab words for it. We can call this supplementary, or we can call it a linear pair. We call it a linear pair down here because it always has to do with straight lines. And all linear relationships, as we know, have to do with straight lines. So whenever you have a super straight line like this, and you have another line that's sort of cutting it up, we have two parts now that are sitting on that line. That means that they're supplementary or they're a linear pair. A and B are supplementary. A and B are a linear pair. And what that means is that A plus B must add up and equal 180 degrees, like we kind of talked about with the car example. If you're driving this way and you do a U-turn, you just did a 180 degrees because now you're on a straight line. So anytime you have a straight line that's broken into two pieces, those two pieces have to add up to 180. So with this example, we don't know A, we know B is 100 degrees, and we know those two things have to add up to equal 180. So what plus 100 will equal 180? Oh, well, 80 plus 100 will equal 180. So angle A has to be 80 and angle B has to be 100 because now they add together and they equal 180 degrees. The next relationship also has two names. We can call this a complementary or a right angle. And this is like when you're in your car and you literally make a left turn or a right turn. You just did a 90-degree turn, which is a complementary or right angle. So what we just sort of got to here is that any time that you guys see that sharp corner that looks like a square, we know that we have a complementary or right angle, and those two angles have to add up to equal 90 degrees. Now, the nice thing about complementary and right angles is that you're always going to have this nice little box in the corner reminding you that this is a complementary or right angle, which means that they have to add together to be 90 degrees. You'll always see a nice visual box in the corner. So we know that A this time is 50, plus we don't know what B is, and it has to equal 90. So 50 plus what is gonna give us our 90 degrees? If you're having trouble figuring it out, you can solve this just like an equation using our inverse operations. What's the opposite of adding? Subtracting 50. And we get that B is equal to 40 degrees. 50 plus 40 is 90 degrees, which has to be true when you have complementary or right angles. The last one that we need to see is something called a vertical pair. And vertical pairs happen when you have two lines that cross each other and make 1, 2, 3, 4 different angles. Vertical pairs sit across from each other. So A is next to C. It's next to D, but it's across from B. So A and B are vertical pairs, and that means that A is equal to B. So if you know that 60 is A, you automatically know that B is 60 as well. Now C is next to A. It's next to B, but it's across from angle D, which means that C is also equal to D. That's another vertical pair. So if C is 120, then D is also 120 automatically. Make sure that you have these 3 vocab words down in these notes, and now we'll start applying it to some practice problems. Let's apply that learning to these 4 examples. Go ahead and take a second and get these 4 set up in your notes. Okay, now for each one of these, I want you to write down what the relationship is, if it's supplementary, complementary, vertical pair, and then solve for that missing angle that I have labeled. So number 1 up here, I see that I have 2 lines crossing each other, and I see this 85 and C are across from each other. They're not next to each other, but they're across from each other on these angles, which means this is a vertical pair. And that means these are equal, or what we say in geometry, that they are congruent. It's the fancy way in shapes and geometry that we say things are equal. So if you have 2 angles across from each other like this, they're vertical pairs, so it means they're congruent, they're the same. Let's go down here now. Right here, one visual thing I automatically see is I see this little square box in the corner. That automatically means that we are dealing with a right angle, or you could call it complementary. This is one of the easier ones to see because of that nice visual box. And complementary or right angles have to add up to 90 degrees. So whatever C is plus 20 has to give me 90. 70 plus 20 gets me to that 90. So C has to be 70 degrees to make it work. Number 3 up here. So I see I have a super straight line that's broken into 2 pieces. Anytime we're dealing with a super straight line and the angles are next to each other, we're talking about that linear pair. Or you could call it supplementary. They're on a straight line and they're next to each other. That means that the 2 angles have to add up to 180. 30 plus whatever x is has to be 180. So 30 plus 150 gets us to that 180. All right, let's try out this last one. So I notice I have 2 lines crossing each other, but 40 and x, they're next to each other. They're not across. So we have to decide, does it make sense that number 4 is a vertical pair or a linear pair? Vertical pairs, like I said, they have to be across from each other, where linear pairs are next to each other. It looks to me like even though it's sideways, the 40 and the x, they're next to each other like this problem is up here. So if they're next to each other on a line, that means they're supplementary. So 40 plus x has to add up to 180. So 40 plus 140 will get us that 180. So this is another linear pair.